Any other questions?
Is silt from the bottom of a small lake good?
Well, that's an interesting question, not so much for the nutrients, but for the muck. And remember how the Egyptian civilization was based on the Nile flooding over here. What that did is that washed soil down from Uganda and other places and concentrated, and you get this alluvial fan, and it brought instant fertility. The Aztecs had this idea, a similar idea with their chinampas, which were raised beds coming right out of lake beds or marshes, and the way they fertilized it was just by dipping muck up and putting on. When you're using intensive agriculture, what you need to do if you're using small plots, you have three main concerns: fertility, water, and labor. And the fertility, like with the Nile and with the chinampas, you've got your water and your fertility right there because you've got the muck, you've got the water. And also with the chinampas, you have that water subsoil too. See, so the plants can go deep and they can get that water. So you don't really have to irrigate because it's right there. It's just seeping in. And then, but then you've got the labor problem. And back in the old days, they had slaves. Now we've got to. Basically, one of the things about industrial agriculture is that they replaced the human labor with mechanical labor, and so they basically pushed people off the farm in the last 60 years, and now they're living in cities, and they replaced the people who actually did the work by hand. They replaced them with cheap fossil fuels. Well, now that the cheap fossil fuels are running out, we have to find some way to get all these people back on the farm because we have a labor pool. We have plenty of people right now who are unemployed, and they could be growing food.
We use, I like the term that petroleum has been our energy slave.
Yes, it has. Yes.
So now we have to figure out how to wean ourselves off this incredible energy slave.
Right.
Worse way to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. Have you ever used alfalfa as a free manure?
I haven't because, for one thing, alfalfa is hard to grow around here. That's like for instance, they always say that's why all the dairy farmers get their hay from eastern Washington or from Yakima is because we can't really grow great alfalfa around here. So I don't bother with it. I like favas. And let me put these favas, pass them around. And I got this idea from Steve Solomon too. These are favas. They're fava. Fava is a vetch. It's not a true bean. It's part of the bean family or the legumine. And you've got these. There's say 4 or 5 beans in here in this pod. And this is a small. If you know favas, this is a very small fava. This is a cover crop fava. It's called banner. And the ones that are this long are called Windsor or Aqua Dulce. And this you can plant in the fall, and it'll take it down to 10 degrees, down 10 degrees, and without freezing. Well, where I'm at, the winter has killed off the favas the last 2 years, so I don't even bother anymore. I put them down in the spring. Then I let them grow up, and I pick them and keep what I can, and then they reseed again. So you can actually, once you pick favas, there will be enough that will fall down. You can just keep that going. So let me pass that around. Now the thing about these favas is you can actually just take those. You don't have to shell them. 75% of that weight, and Larry and I did a test, 75% of that weight there is the bean, and only 25% is the husk. But as you know, when you've seen beans that just come up, they don't need to be out of the husk. So what you can do is you figure out how many pounds you want per acre, and adjust that to whatever you're doing, say 50 by 50 or 3 rows of 75 feet long rows or whatever you're doing, and you just broadcast them like wheat. Then you take your tiller, put it on a shallow setting, just run over it, and then put them on the ground. Let them go. You do not have to even shell those. So that's the real easy way to continue to have. I got bags and bags of them, so I can take my favas, the next month and just put them down wherever I want to. Now that brings me to my rotation. I got a 6-year rotation, and it's real important to have a rotation because you have to rotate your potatoes, you have to rotate your tomatoes, you should rotate everything. So my rotation is a grain, and then a legume, and then root, fruit, pea, leaf. So the grain is like say wheat, barley. I'm doing triticale this year and things like that. And then the legume is favas or soybeans, and then root, fruit, pea, leaf. Root crops like potatoes, onions, carrots. Fruiting crop, tomato, squash, things like that. Corn. Pea is the main rotation is a 4-year vegetable rotation. And so right in the middle, there's either peas or beans to give a little bit more legume. Okay, and then leaf, and I regard, you know, kale, cabbage, salad greens, all that. They're all in there. Go ahead.
Root, fruit,
Pea, leaf.
pea, leaf. Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, and it's on. It should be on the handout too.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I started out with a 4-year rotation, and I thought, well, I want to branch into grain, which I've done the last couple of years, and I want to do the favas, I want to do soybeans, et cetera. Like right now, I'm making my own soy milk, and so I want to grow soybeans for that. Plus, I want to have soybeans that I can use for my fertilizer too. Go ahead.
If I plant one of them now, it will grow.
Oh, sure,
It will grow.
sure, yeah.
Keep it.
Yeah. I got plenty of them. If you want to take a handful or whatever, no problem.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like to get put it right.
Okay, so the crop rotation. And we basically covered animal manure. I don't feel I need to do it, but there are plenty of people who think that animals are, you know, the way to go. And like I said, the animal manures are probably masking and mitigating the effects of the chemical agriculture for the last 60 years. And so now that we have a lot of monoculture in places like Kansas, Iowa, Minnesota, we're starting to see the results real quick. And since it's been masked for years, it may catch up to us even faster than we realize. So in other words, 60 bushels of acre for wheat, they dropped down to 20 a year or two time. Okay. So
That'll make a change.
yes. Go ahead, sir.
Do you use green manures? Do you undersow with green manures? And if you do, what kind of green manures do you use?
Well, I try that once in a while, but I don't know. It all depends on what I can do. See, so for instance, like Mike Finger, he's real keen on doing things like he'll have a couple rows of cabbages and he'll put white clover in between, and that's good. But what I want to do is, I have found out that you need to do a lot of tillage, because what that does is that gets more oxygen in the soil and lets the microbes chew and gives us some, and then it keeps your weed problem down, your weed problem manageable. So what I do is I run between the rows with my tiller, and then when I'm weeding, then I pull the weeds out and lay them in the row as mulch. So if I was to rely on understories, then I would lose my ability to till. And my weeds are pretty strong, and I mean they get a lot to eat. It's good soil and they grow great. And so I don't want to lose that ability to till them. See, so that's the main reason is that's why I don't use the understory. Other people have done experiments with it.